Sweep, mop, wax. Sweep, mop, wax. How did I get to a place in my life where at 45 years old, I found employment as a low paid janitor for a school system in New York City? As I mopped the tiled floor of this century old institution, I began to feel as if I'm a loser. What choices did I make to get me to this low point in my life? I'm feeling like I'm making $15 an hour. I have a comprehensive benefit package, and overall, I'm working a pretty decent job doing things the right way. With all that said, why am I not content? People in my hood call me born. I was raised in Queens, New York, and my parents always raised me to be a good kid. I took school seriously and did my best to make sure that I did well. Being the eldest of 8 children, things were pretty scarce in my household. Nevertheless, we were still able to survive, and I would consider us to be a very tight-knit family. About 3 years after my younger brother was born, my youngest brother actually, my father walked out of the picture. To this day, I still don't know exactly why he left. What I do know is that he left a young woman with 8 young children, all under the age of 15 in a state of constant struggle. I saw my mother working 3 jobs, barely ever getting time to rest. Her work consisted mainly of cleaning white folks' houses over in Long Island. Beyond those jobs, she also used our house as a source of income. We were the first Caribbean family in my block, and my mother took full advantage of her unique cooking style that captured the hungry mouths of people in our neighborhood who were looking for our cuisine at their parties and events. My mother also created beautiful dolls with elaborate dresses that were nothing more than toilet paper concealers for bathrooms. With these 2 trades plus her 3 jobs, my mother was able to completely take care of a 9-people household, 10 if you count our dog Jack. With all this said, my mother was the epitome of a hustler. She was able to do so much with so little at her hand. Seeing her struggle and work hard, I realized as the eldest it was time for me to stand up and get involved in our household economics. I wanted to man up. I started out my career the normal way. I got a job at a local Roy Rogers and worked really hard after school there. For about 1 year of my life, I put chicken and biscuit in boxes and smiled in a phony manner to people who I secretly hated. I stood there working for chump change and I felt like I wasn't advancing. Why is it that the people who came into this establishment could afford to have the nice things, but I couldn't? For the last 3 months of employment, I began to steal money from the cash register. I started off low and worked my way to a point where I was making almost $50 a day. I would walk by tables where patrons sat, and as soon as they got up to use the bathroom, I would steal their wallets. Eventually, it all caught up to me, and I was fired from Roy Rogers. But by that time, I had already made a huge realization: working is for suckers, and I could make much, much more, much easier ways. By the age of 18, I became one of the most prevalent boosters in Queens. I had people from all walks of life coming to buy things from me, from the young teacher who just needed those Calvin Klein jeans, to the dudes in the hood who wanted a nice pair of Pro-Keds or Adidas, to the man who was about to be married and needed an engagement ring for his wife, to the pastor who needed a new stereo system for his Cadillac. I was the supplier of the urban world. White people had Sears Roebuck. Black people in my neighborhood had Barn. I was like the Robin Hood of my time. I stole a lot and cheated to get merchandise, and I sold it back to people for the normal 50% discount. People always wondered how I was able to get such a wide array of products and sell it for so cheap. I simply always joked and said, if I tell you, I have to kill you. The conversations usually ended about then. My techniques were pretty simple, but they allowed me to completely own the retail world from the 1980s to the 1990s. I had a few things that I did that were proven effective and got me my products for a good price. The first and most obvious thing I did was pickpocket. I would go to malls in mainly white areas and snatch people's wallets while they were busy or simply not paying attention. Any given day, I snatched about 4 wallets and purses, with Christmas time being my most profitable season. There were tons of people with money, and there were tons of people back in my hood who needed products, so I was at a point of high supply and high demand. My pickpocketing introduced me to using people's credit cards to buy things. If I found a credit card in the mall, I would simply go to a store and buy something expensive quickly before the person reported it stolen. I would then return the product at a different store, either selling the store credit to someone or buying things that people in my neighborhood would value more. My second way of getting product was the old-fashioned way, by working in the stores. Myself, along with some accomplices, would get random jobs at department stores, which were just a front to get the products. We would use those connections and usually quit within a month or two. We walked away with our store shirts and name tags and keys to various places in the store. Using this, we were able to come into department stores inconspicuously and get more items without anyone noticing. It was the perfect scheme and we never got caught. I had keys to all the big stores, and by this time in the game, I was making about $3,000 a week, if not more. I was still helping out at home. I never forgot that my mother needed me to help out. She started to become inquisitive, however, about my new choice of clothing. I was wearing really expensive clothes, my room decor, and the amount of money I was giving her. I dealt with her questions for months before realizing that it may be best for me to move out. I wanted to move away and have my space, but I wanted to make sure I still helped out and didn't make things seem even weirder at home. I ended up keeping a room at home and getting an apartment that no one knew about a town or two over. I removed all illegal business activities from my mother's house and began using my house as a pit of profit. Things were moving really fast and I was making a lot of money. I hadn't got locked up yet and I was becoming the man. I had the clothes, the car, and the girls. Everyone knew what I did, but no one spoke of it. There's a bit of solidarity in the hood. People understand that if I was their gateway to nicer things for a low cost, they did everything in their power to salvage that relationship and make my rep in the neighborhood squeaky clean, making sure that I was never snitched out. In the late 1990s, I began a new form of hustling. A friend of mine heard about a machine that actually made credit cards. We could get one credit card from someone and get all their information. We were able to buy a list with people's information. I began my next career moving fraud. I fraudulently created credit cards and was making huge purchases on them. I purchased BMWs and Mercedes-Benz with credit cards and sold them back to different dealerships, taking the cash to finance my first house. I was making so much money that I didn't know what to do with it. I gave it to friends and close relatives. I gave them these credit cards to uplift themselves, and that was probably the biggest mistake I ever made, and that mistake ended my career. On July 13, 2003, at 5 o'clock in the morning, I received a hasty knock on my door. I knew what this knock was. Anyone who participates in the underground economy knows what this knock is. I slowly unlocked each of the 5 locks on my door and raised my arms, knowing that this was the end of my career. As the door swung open, I felt the cops swiftly pounce on me, reading me my Miranda rights. "Mr. Joseph, you have the right to remain silent," and telling me that I was being arrested. Now, one bit of emotion came across my face. I was sent to a speedy trial, and by December 1st, I was sentenced. I was sentenced to 6 years in prison, and when the judge ruled against me, again, there was no emotion. I deserved every bit of time. I have managed to make a 25-year career off of stealing and being fraudulent. I thought I was doing something good for myself. I thought I was being different than those drug dealers and pimps. But in reality, it was all the same. We were all the same. In 2008, I was let out of jail. People who used to depend on me really didn't care about me anymore. It seems as if once you stop feeding people's hunger, they lose all interest in you. My family was still there for me. I had over $200,000 in fines, which means I'd be paying back the government for the rest of my life. As I sit here and mop this floor for about $500 a week, I realize that this is not the most glamorous or prosperous as my earlier line of work. However, there is a bit of satisfaction. My family's happy that I'm living my life the right way. I can now sleep comfortably without the constant thought that someone will come in and rob me or arrest me. But most importantly, I'm content with myself. I take pride in the work I do, and I know that things will eventually get better. My career in crime had a good run, but now it's time to face the marathon. Peace.